learner, have you ever felt like that, you read all these articles and you listen to all these podcasts and all this, and you're just soaking up information, but you just can't quite put the big picture together.
Yeah, the quest for an underlying framework, an architecture of reality.
Right. It feels like it's always just out of reach, like you're trying to grab smoke or something, but it's a common longing. A lot of people feel that.
Yeah, a lot of thoughtful people go through this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we do here at the Deep Dive, right? This is like your shortcut to profound understanding. You bring us the source material and we dive in, extract the insights you need so you can really grasp the core ideas without getting bogged down in all the little details, right? And this one, just like every single one, is tailor-made for you and your quest for knowledge.
Taking what could feel overwhelming and turning it into something that's digestible, that's illuminating.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that. So today we're diving into an audio recording you sent over called The Origin, History, and Destiny of Universe Reality, Part 2, 7/18/2024, audio.m4a by Dr. Roger Paul. Now, this is not your typical, listening material while you're commuting to work or something. This is some deep stuff. Dr. Paul is tackling some of the biggest questions out there, like the origin of the universe, the nature of reality, the concept of deity.
It's ambitious, to say the least.
Absolutely. And just so you know, this is actually part of a much larger multi-week study that serves as a primer for something called the Urantia Book, which is this massive text that delves into philosophy, theology, cosmology, all that good stuff. And what's interesting is that Dr. Paul originally started these recordings back in 2013, but he's now revisiting them and adding visuals to help make the concepts even more accessible. So it's like laying this really solid foundation before you start building this really complex structure.
That's a great way to put it.
So our mission for this deep dive is crystal clear. We are going to extract the core foundational concepts that Dr. Paul introduces, specifically his exploration of how everything came to be. So where does he begin?
He starts right at the beginning with a concept he calls the postulated I am.
Okay, postulated I am. That sounds pretty fundamental. Like we're going back to ground zero here. So what exactly does that mean?
Okay, so it's a concept rooted in the Old Testament, in the phrase, I am that I am, which is what God said to Moses. And in this teaching, the postulated I am represents God the Father in his most primordial state, the being before there were even universes.
Wow. So like before the Big Bang, before stars, before even space as we know it, there's this postulated I am, this essence of God the Father.
Right, like the ultimate source.
That's mind-blowing. So early on, Dr. Paul mentions a visual aid, a chart.
Yeah, almost immediately he points listeners to the Don Este chart. And it's really key to grasping the scope of what he's about to present.
This Don Este chart, it sounds like it's attempting to like map out everything.
Yeah, pretty much. He says it covers the origin and history and destiny of universe reality. So we're talking cosmology, the structure and evolution of the universe, cosmogony, which is the origin of the universe in theology, the nature of God, and divine matters.
Wow.
All is laid out in the Urantia Book.
Wow. So it's like a visual roadmap of the entire cosmos.
In a nutshell, yeah.
And he mentioned it was huge.
Yeah, he said in its printed form, it could be 5 feet by 6 feet.
That's a serious diagram.
That's a big poster. You know, that size really gives you a sense of how much information it's trying to contain, how much is interconnected. It's designed to give a really comprehensive overview of a huge, complex system.
Okay, so this chart is like this big visual key, and it's actually available for our listeners to check out themselves, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It gives very clear instructions on how to find it. It's a free download. You can get it from either the Atlanta Urantia Study Group website or the Fifth Epical website. Look for a section called UB Study Aids, and you'll find a link called Don Este's Universe Reality Chart. And the chart itself is hosted on a website called Square Circles. So it's out there. He really encourages people to download it and explore it.
A free key to understanding the universe. I love it. All right, so we got this huge chart as a backdrop, and then Dr. Paul dives into what he calls the 7 absolutes, and it sounds like this is where we really start getting into the bedrock of reality here.
Absolutely. He emphasizes these aren't just important, these are the only 7 absolutes, and they represent the fundamental principles upon which all of reality is structured. And he makes it clear, all 7 of these absolutes originate within that initial postulated I am.
Okay, so 7 absolute foundations for absolutely everything. Got it.
Yeah.
So let's break them down one by one, just like Dr. Paul does. What's the first absolute?
The first one is the universal Father himself. And he calls this the original absolute. And he associates it with thought or volition.
Okay, so thought, volition, will.
Right. So basically, the very beginning of reality lies in the will of the universal Father.
So before anything else, there's intention, thought, will.
Exactly.
Okay, makes sense. What's the second absolute?
The second absolute is the original Son. This is the expression, or the word,
Yeah.
and he connects that back to similar concepts in biblical text, and he calls this the spiritual absolute.
Okay, so the initial thought becomes the word, the spiritual reality, I see.
Right.
And what about the third absolute?
The third absolute is the conjoint actor, and this is the action.
Okay, so we have thought, expression, and now action.
Right. And he explains that the Paradise Trinity, which is the Father, the Son, and the conjoint actor, functions through this triad thought, expression, action.
Got it.
The conjoint actor is particularly significant because it's responsible for creating and organizing finite physical reality, using the Isle of Paradise as its central base.
Okay, so the conjoint actor brings those thoughts and expressions into the physical world. And you mentioned paradise. Is that one of the absolutes?
Yes, the Isle of Paradise is the fourth absolute. It's the original finite absolute. And he specifically talks about the physical gravity circuit that returns all energy back to paradise.
So paradise is like this central anchor.
It's not just a place. It's a fundamental absolute governing the physical cosmos.
Wow, okay. So we have the universal Father representing thought, the original Son, divine expression, the conjoint actor, force of action, and the Isle of Paradise as the original finite foundation. That's four. What are the other three?
The last three are grouped together as experiential destiny absolutes, and they're tied to the concept of the supreme being, which we'll get to later. But first, the fifth absolute is the qualified absolute, or the deity absolute. And this is everything that is deified or has the potential to be deified.
Okay, so all the spiritual beings and hierarchies.
Right, and it's the revealed spiritual absolute.
Okay, revealed spiritual.
Mhm.
And the sixth absolute.
The sixth is the universal absolute. This is the evolving absolute. And it's like the glue between the fully deified aspects of the universe and the completely unqualified absolute.
Okay, so it connects the spiritual with the what's the seventh one?
The seventh absolute is the unqualified absolute. And this is the unrevealed physical absolute, and its main role is to pull primordial matter away from neither paradise to the edges of the master universe and the outer space levels.
Okay, so the unqualified absolute is kind of spreading the raw material of the cosmos.
Right, and he makes it clear. It's non-deity. It's a fundamental force, not a being.
I see. So each absolute has its own inherent nature, even though they all originate from the postulated I am. It's all very interconnected.
Absolutely.
Okay, now to clarify the divine structure, Dr. Paul talks about the first source and center, which is God the Father, the second source and center, the eternal Son, and the third source and center, the infinite spirit, or the conjoint actor. And he emphasizes that they act in unison even though they have distinct characteristics.
Right, unified it.
So that's the primary hierarchy. And then he comes back to the Isle of Paradise again, and he calls it the beginning finite of all universes.
Yeah, he really hammers home that it's the absolute foundation of everything physical.
Okay, now earlier he grouped those last three absolutes, the qualified, the universal, and the unqualified, under experiential destiny absolutes. And he connected them to experience and the supreme being. What's that all about?
So he defines experience in this context as relating directly to the supreme being, which is this evolving deity who grows through the cumulative experiences of all finite creatures in all the universes.
That's a fascinating concept.
Yeah, so these three experiential destiny absolutes are part of how this huge ocean of experience is gathered and used to help the supreme being evolve.
Wow, so like our lives, our experiences contribute to this cosmic deity.
Right, the idea.
Okay, so there's this dynamic, experience-driven aspect to reality. Now, Dr. Paul also brings up something called the levels of God, the sevenfold. What is it?
So this is like the 7 levels or categories of deities that beings progress through as they move toward God the Father. And it's applicable across all 7 super universes, which are these massive divisions within the grand universe.
Okay, so 7 levels, 7 super universes.
Yeah, it's like a spiritual hierarchy.
Makes sense. What are some of the levels he mentions?
He specifically lists the first 4. So first you have the Paradise Creator's sons and their divine partners, the creative mother spirits.
Okay, so the creators.
Right, and they create local universes, which are kind of like sectors of space. Our galaxy is in a local universe. He mentions there's something like 700,000 local universes in the grand universe.
700,000. That's a lot of universes.
That's a lot.
What's the second level?
The second level is the Ancients of Days,
Yeah.
and they are the supreme judicial authorities within each of the 7 super universes.
Okay, so they're like the judges.
Right, they make big decisions, particularly about survival and progression of beings.
Okay, high level authority there. What about level 3?
Level 3 is the 7 master spirits, and they are the heads of each super universe.
So they're kind of like the regional governors.
In a way, yeah.
And the fourth level you said was the supreme being.
Right. And he goes into a bit more detail about the Supreme Being. He says it's an evolving deity, and its essence is basically the sum total of the experiential reality of all finite creation.
So it's constantly developing, growing.
Right. It's being enriched by all our experiences and the experiences of every being everywhere. He even compares it to a thought adjuster, which is a fragment of God that resides within us. But this is like on a cosmic scale. The Supreme Being is eventually going to evolve into God the Supreme.
Wow, so everything we experience, all our joys, our struggles, all of it is actually feeding into this supreme being.
It's all interconnected.
That's pretty profound.
Yeah.
So the levels of God the sevenfold, it's not just a ladder to climb, but it also shows these different facets of divinity within this structure. Now, Dr. Paul also talks about the origin of matter itself. Where does that fit in?
He brings up the unqualified absolute again, and that mysterious pull it exerts on primordial matter, specifically what's called space-rarefied paradise matter. And it draws it away from paradise out to the edges of the master universe and outer space levels.
Okay, so it's pulling at the raw material.
And then he says the architects of paradise, which are these highly skilled divine beings, they step in and organize that primordial matter into what's called space-functioning matter.
Okay, so they're like processing it, refining it.
Exactly. And then that space-functioning matter is what the Paradise Creator's sons used to build the universes.
Wow, so it's like a cosmic assembly line, raw material refined, then used for construction. Amazing. Now, lastly, Dr. Paul touches on something called the circuits of paradise. What are those?
He talks about three main circuits that originate from and return to paradise. So first, there's the gravity circuit, which is the physical attraction between things. Then there's the sun circuit, which he says is spiritual in nature, that carries spiritual forces and energy. And then there's the conjoint actor's mind circuit, which is for the flow of mind and consciousness throughout the cosmos.
Okay, so not just matter and energy, but also these fundamental forces flow from and return to paradise. So it really is the central hub of everything.
Yeah, it's the source and destination for all these essential forces.
So we're talking about a truly holistic view of reality. Every little thing is connected back to paradise and ultimately to the postulated I am.
Everything is ultimately interwoven.
Okay, learner, so much information. What would you say is the most important takeaway from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is just the sheer intricacy and the foundational nature of reality as it's presented here. This whole structure that starts with the postulated I am and then unfolds through the seven absolutes and the paradise trinity, it governs everything. It's a universe built on these profound interconnected principles.
And what was the most intriguing element for you personally?
Well, for me, it's the idea of the supreme being constantly evolving through all our experiences. It's both humbling and empowering to think that our lives, our choices, are actually contributing to something so vast and cosmic.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a new perspective on things. So for you, learner, how might understanding these concepts about the postulated I am and the absolutes and how the universe is structured, how might that help you in your quest for knowledge?
I think by grasping these fundamentals, you're building this really strong framework that you can then use to understand more specific information. It gives you the context, the big picture, which makes everything else easier to process.
It's like having the blueprint before you start building the house. And remember that Dawn SD chart is out there. It's a visual representation of so much of what we just talked about. We've only scratched the surface here.
It's a treasure trove of information, a key to unlocking deeper understanding.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, learner. If you really take to heart this interconnectedness, the fact that everything from the postulated I am to your own experiences is shaping the supreme being, how might that change your perspective on your daily life, your place in the cosmos?
Yeah, it's a question worth pondering how this understanding might shift your view of yourself, your choices, your place in this grand scheme of things.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, learner. Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring.
Keep diving.
Yeah, keep diving.